Hello, everyone. My name is Ann Lee. I'm the interactive audio producer at The Washington Post. And today I'm here to talk to you about all the lessons that we've learned in trying to master voice assistants at the Post. Do I need to click it? OK, here. To start, I wanted to start with a little bit about my career trajectory. And I promise that there is a point to this. First, like many of us here, I got my start in print, giving a shout out to my high school newspaper. I would be remiss if I didn't. Then I was a fellow at the Northwestern University Night Lab in college. The Night Lab is a really cool space where student engineers and student journalists got to collaborate on projects. And then out of college, I was a reporter at West Virginia Public Broadcasting where I focused on radio. My point in sharing all of this is to say that things have changed so much in my short career in journalism. It used to be that you were either in tech or you were in radio, or you were in tech or you were in print. But things have changed a lot, so much so that now I have this really weird title called interactive audio producer, which, weirdness aside, is actually a really cool job because it means that I get to work on voice assistants at the Post and collaborate with our editorial teams and our product teams. So when I came here from West Virginia Public Broadcasting, this is the question that I really had to think about, which is, how are voice assistant listeners different from podcast listeners? And this is what my team came up with. First, voice assistant users are listening at home. They're not listening during their commute or while they're on the go. Second, they're multitasking while they're listening. And third, they expect up-to-date news whenever they ask for it. So we explored two types of content with that in mind on voice assistants. One type of content is called flash briefings. Flash briefings are available on Alexa and Google Home. It's essentially a playlist of news sources that a user can curate by themselves, and you can listen to it by saying, Alexa, what's in the news, or OK, Google, what's in the news. The other type of content is called a skill, and that is unique to Alexa only. You can think of a skill as an app that you can open on Alexa and interact with. So first, I'm going to talk about our flash briefings. We have 3 flash briefings at the Post. Each one is sort of an experiment within itself. Our first flash briefing is called the Daily 202's Big Idea. We launched it last year. And it is a basic, it's not a basic podcast, but it is a standard political news and analysis program. And what we wanted to know with the Daily 202's Big Idea as our first flash briefing is, does it work on Alexa? Do people want it? And we found that people did want it, and what they wanted was something between about 5 and 10 minutes, and they wanted something that was well produced. Our second experiment is called Retropod. Retropod is a program about forgotten moments in history. We cover things like, did you know that there was a point in time in US history where you could actually send your children through the mail, like you could mail them to grandma's house? But we also cover a lot of, back in those good old days, we also covered a lot of serious topics too, though, like Bobby Kennedy's speech when Martin Luther King was assassinated. Our experiment with Retropod was we wanted to see if there was a space in the user's daily habit for non-news content. And while we launched Retropod in February, so it's too soon to say for sure, we have seen a really good response from our listeners. And we've also seen a really strong response on the podcast platform. Retropod's also available as a podcast, and which might say something about the appetite for non-news short daily stories on that platform. And our third flash briefing is called Capital Weather Gang. Capital Weather Gang is targeted at a very local audience. They are our weather team at the Washington Post, and they're insanely popular. And what we wanted to see with Capital Weather Gang is, could we compete with the native Alexa, the native weather function on voice assistants? So if you want to check the weather on a voice assistant, all you have to do is say, Alexa, what's the weather? And she'll tell you, or OK, Google. And it's great. It's easy. So can we compete with that? We found that while our numbers from Capital Weather Gang, the flash briefing, are relatively small, they're actually quite sticky, meaning that people are coming back to it every day. And I think that's for 2 reasons. One is for a reason that I cannot take credit for. Capital Weather Gang, that team is insanely good at building community around their program. And so when we launched this, it was popular like right away amongst that group. But second of all, checking the weather is already a part of a user's daily habit. When you wake up every morning, whether you're talking to Alexa, watching the television, or looking at your mobile app, you're checking the weather. And so Capital Weather Gang fits perfectly into that daily habit. So those were our micro lessons that we sort of learned from each flash briefing. Here are some of the big takeaways that we got. On the product side, first, it's really important to choose names that are easy to pronounce and are distinct. Another way that you can invoke podcasts on Alexa is by saying, okay, Alexa, open the Daily 202's Big Idea podcast. It's a mouthful to say. It's a lot to remember. Alexa can recognize it pretty well, but it's a lot. On the other hand, Retropod is really short and easy to remember and easy to say, but it's a fake word, so Alexa gets confused by it, and Google Home gets confused by it. For now, flash briefings really need to be daily at least. That's because Alexa does not expire flash briefings when once you've listened to it. So if you're checking their news throughout the day or throughout the week, if you get the same thing over and over again from the Washington Post, for example, that's going to be super annoying. And I should note that Google Home does expire flash briefings, which is really nice. And third, flash briefings are really hard to discover. If any of you have navigated the Alexa app or the Google Home app, it's like a pain in the butt. That's something that we are still trying to overcome. And fourth, the flash briefing experience depends on what users put in their queue. So there's a little bit of a lack of control in that regard. But on the content side, we came down to this one simple lesson, which is a good flash briefing is just good storytelling. It's just good audio, but with a twist. And that twist is voice interaction. Our second type of content, skills, which if you remember is an app that you can open on Alexa and interact with. So just a reminder, what our skill listeners are doing, they are listening at home, they're multitasking, and they're expecting up-to-date news. So we have one existing skill currently. It's at the Washington Post. It's called the Washington Post. It features headlines that update throughout the day, the Daily 202's Big Idea on demand, and breaking news notifications. And so today I want to talk about the breaking news notifications in particular. So at the Post, whenever you get a push alert from the Washington Post, what's going on is that we have a newsletter and alerts team that writes the push alert, and they send it to your mobile devices. After they do that, then they rewrite that alert to be suitable for audio, and they'll send that to your Echo device. When you get an alert on your Echo, it'll light up yellow, and then it'll make a sound, and then you'll say, Alexa, what's my notification? And then she will read it to you. And these alerts expire after 1 hour. That's because we didn't want our listeners coming home to like 100 alerts and then them having to comb through that. So here are some of the lessons we've learned from that. As Marty Barron, my boss, said earlier, notifications are quite intrusive, and Alexa notifications are even more so. So we only send the highest level of news alerts to our Alexa listeners. Second, on that same note, notifications are especially intrusive when you're trying to sleep. So we send only the highest of the highest notifications to our listeners when they're sleeping. Unfortunately, we can only really accommodate East Coast listeners because people are sleeping all the time. And third, notifications like flash briefings are really hard to discover due to the nature of the Alexa app. So that's our existing skill, but we used to have two other skills that are now retired. One was our Olympics skill that gave Olympics data like not polling data, like medal counts, for example. And the other one was our election skill that gave polling data amongst other data from the general elections. But I wanted to talk about our cooking skill today, which never got released, but I think it features everything that is really hard about making a skill. So the idea behind our cooking skill was, what if you could cook with Alexa? Sounds like a really great idea, right? Like when you're cooking, your hands are really busy. Like you don't really want to touch your phone when you're like whatever. It's like gross. I don't really like cooking that much. But so like, what if Alexa could like read the recipe for you and you didn't have to touch anything, right? Sounds like a great idea. It was not. But we learned a lot from it. So this is one of our first takeaways. When you're cooking and you're listening to audio information, it's really hard to remember what she is telling you, what it is telling you. For example, recipes are full of lists, and lists are notoriously hard to remember. This step is essentially telling you to just mix coconut and rice, or boil coconut milk and rice. There are like 3 lists going on in here, which is crazy. So that was really hard for people to remember. Second of all, Alexa skills expire after 5 minutes. So if you take longer than 5 minutes to complete a step, you're going to have to reopen that skill again and start over, which is really annoying. And third, this was unexpected, but cooking with a voice assistant really killed human interaction. When you're cooking, you want to be talking with your partner, you want to be talking with your kids, maybe you just want to be watching a television show by yourself. You can't really do that when you have a voice assistant listening to you. It gets really confusing. So our big takeaway from working with Alexa and working with Flash Briefings and working with Skills is that it's really interesting technology, but it's not great, at least not yet. So with that in mind, how do we prepare for the future? The first thing that we shouldn't do is we shouldn't think of voice assistant technologies as just another place to throw your existing audio or video content. That twist that we talked about earlier, the voice interaction part, that's really important because it shapes user behavior and user expectations around your product. Second, we need to continue teaching listeners how to use their devices. Right now, there is a huge lack of information that empowers users on using their devices to its full potential, and we need to compensate for that. And third, we need to foster meaningful collaborations between your news content teams in your newsroom and your product teams. At the Post, we're really lucky where our product teams and our editorial sides have really great relationships with each other, and that allows us to experiment and move forward in really intentional ways. And before I end this slide, I wanted to say one more thing. At the Post, my team, we are really big fans of collaboration between newsrooms. We really believe that a rising tide lifts all boats, especially when the waters are uncharted as they are with voice assistant technologies. So if you've worked with voice assistants and you want to tell us about it, or if you're looking to go into it and you want to hear about what we've done a little more, please get in touch. We would love to share with you and learn from you as well. And if you want to learn more about our products, you can visit wapo.st/smartspeakers. Thank you.